I'm Sarah Abel, and I am a relatively new EatDenver board member. I joined, I think, right at the beginning of the pandemic. I'm also a partner at Baltz & Company, and so happy to see the lower half of everybody's face in this room. Katie, I just want to say a huge thank you to you for shepherding EatDenver, as well as my fellow board members, everybody in this room for your grit, your hustle, your determination. The last couple years have been challenging. The restaurant industry is always challenging, but I echo Peter in saying how grateful I am for this community, and even more grateful to be a part of this community. It's truly the best. The restaurant industry is amazing, so thank you all for being here as well. Now, down to business. Most people work and grind their whole lives for just one title, but our next speaker is a really big deal. Sorry, I wish John was here for the herbaceous roast. I couldn't pass it up. Adrian is a brilliant, funny, and fabulous multi-hyphenate. He's a big screen star. If you haven't seen High on the Hog, I suggest you run, don't walk. He is a James Beard Foundation award-winning author, a certified barbecue judge, which maybe is the coolest title ever, an attorney, a presidential advisor. He was the special assistant to President Clinton's Initiative for One America, the first freestanding office in the White House, devoted to addressing issues of racial, religious, and ethnic reconciliation. And whoever had 2 Clinton mentions on their bingo card wins today. He is a brilliant coiner of phrases. He is a badass thrift shopper. He is a public servant. He is the soul food scholar, and he's also a dear friend. He's the author of 3 books, Soul Food, which earned him Beard Foundation Award, The President's Kitchen Cabinet, which was a finalist for the 2018 NAACP Image Award for Best Literary Nonfiction, as well as the 2018 Colorado Book Award for History, and most recently, Black Smoke, African Americans in the United States of Barbecue. We are so lucky to have this gem of a human in our own community as well as in our backyard. And while he's currently en route to a speaking engagement in Chattanooga, Tennessee, I am honored and delighted to introduce his, and to borrow his phrase, slammin', virtual Ed Talk. So Adrian, kick some ass out there in Tennessee, and without further ado, his Ed Talk. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Adrian Miller, the Soul Food Scholar. My tagline is dropping knowledge like hot biscuits, and it is my honor and privilege to talk to you about the subject, leading with a mouthful. Now, this is going to be kind of different because I am going to, in a way, brainstorm with you and share some ideas on how the hospitality industry can be leaders in essentially bringing our country together. We see all the headlines about how fractured we are, but I truly believe, pun intended, that there's a hunger for community and for connection. And in our society, there are fewer and fewer places where people from different walks of life can come together. And the hospitality space is one of those few places left. So I've been thinking a lot about how hospitality industry folks can be leaders. And here's some of the ideas that I've been thinking about. And first of all, we have to think about hospitality spaces, our restaurants, our hotels, wherever, in 3 ways. In some of these ways, people have thought about them, and it may not be obvious, but one is that these are places where people connect, where people build community. The other is that we can think of hospitality spaces as places of learning. And then lastly, that we can think of these places as places of healing. So it's about building community, better understanding, and healing the divides that we have. So the first idea that I have is essentially, and I'm going to talk mostly through the lens of race because that's where I've been doing the most thinking about this, but understand that these ideas can be applied to any concept, whatever divide you see. The other one I've been thinking about a lot is the urban-rural divide. And so this concept can be applied to a number of spaces. But the first one is, how can the hospitality industry engage Black creatives and support them? The last couple of years, we've seen a lot of ideas floated around about, and a real sense of affirming Black creatives. And so one thing I thought is that those in the hospitality space, especially those who have a following, can introduce Black creatives to your followers. So this can easily be done through social media, having a takeover of social media, and highlighting maybe Black creatives could be one way to do that. Following them, supporting them, liking their content, retweeting it, sharing with others. That does so much to help Black creatives in this space. So think about that. And let me just say this and make this very clear. You do not have to wait to Black History Month or Juneteenth to do these things. You can do these throughout the years. And one of the things I think is really important is that we send a message to people that this is not a special effort, right? This is part of the fabric of our community. This is something that we should do. And I think that would be very, very important. Another thing we could do, and an idea I've been thinking about is for restaurants especially, is to culturally source on your menus. Now, our menus have done a lot to educate diners, and diners are very interested in the backstory, right? So now when you go to a restaurant, you can get not only the place where the animal was raised or where the vegetables were raised, you can learn their personal habits, hobbies, the things they love. So why not culturally source? And by culturally source, I mean that if you are featuring some dish on your menu that have ingredients from another part of the world, or it's a composed dish from another culture, why not let your diner know that? If you have okra on the menu, just say, hey, okra is from West Africa. And if there's not enough real estate on your menu to do this, certainly the server can do it as well. And I'll give you one of my, let me give you a dramatic example. Nashville hot chicken. All right. So Nashville hot chicken, for those who don't know, was born of a Black restaurant in Nashville. So the story goes is that Thornton Prince, got crosswise with the woman in his life who was a great cook. She decided to make his special dish, his favorite dish, fried chicken. And she made a super spicy version of it to burn his mouth out, and wishing ill upon him to, get him for his cheating on her. He ends up loving it. And then that tradition gets started. So it's clearly within African-American culture, and it's a great story. So when I go to restaurants and I see Nashville, whatever on the menu, I play dumb. And I just ask the server, hey, can you tell me what's going on with this dish? Most of the time, the server has no clue. And then a lot of times they get the story completely wrong. And it's just really unfortunate. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. If you know that you have a dish from another culture, why not celebrate its origins and inform your diners? Because again, people want to know the backstory. They're interested in the backstory of their food. Another thing to think about when you're featuring dishes from another culture is the dangers of cultural appropriation. And for those of you who don't know about this, this is the idea when someone outside of a group essentially puts a dish on their menu. They may not acknowledge where it was from, or they're making it in a way that's not recognizable by the original culture. And quite a few people have gotten in trouble, especially on social media, for these things. So my suggestions, my advice for avoiding cultural appropriation is: one, when you get something from another culture, just acknowledge that you did that and give those people credit. Two, if it makes sense to compensate the originators, you should do so. And that's a case where, you've been in contact with them, where this is from, and you're in a position to do so. And then three, most importantly, is just make the food well. There's nothing worse than having something appropriated and then it's just whack. It's just nasty. I mean, that makes no sense at all. Other things that we could do in the hospitality industry is I think that we could use our restaurants to become a convener for having difficult conversations and engaging people. I'll give you a few examples. In Mississippi, there was something called Mission Mississippi, and this has been going on for 2 decades, where on designated days of the year, this organization has recruited restaurants to essentially have a steep discount for diners who are in interracial dining parties. So there's a code that's given, it's 2 + 2, and that dinner party has to be interracial in its composition, and then they get a 22% discount for those that are participating. And based on anecdotal evidence and also just articles on this, we see people making the attempt at least to form friendships across differing racial lines. And that's something that Mississippi has done. We could certainly do that in other parts of the country. So something to think about, some kind of incentive that will bring people together in your restaurant. Another thing to do is to have what I call a resident chef program, where maybe you invite a chef from another culinary tradition to maybe have a special event in your restaurant. Maybe it's something more engaged, but it's a way to highlight that other culture, maybe create a fusion meal that could somehow highlight both the cultures, the culinary cultures that you are celebrating in your restaurant, as well as the other person's restaurant. So I'm thinking it would be really interesting if, say, like an Italian restaurant paired with a soul food cook. And there's some there's some overlap there. One example is fried fish and spaghetti, which is a very popular thing, not only in parts of the South, not all the South, because I get a lot of haterade on social media when I talk about fried fish and spaghetti, but also gets love in the upper Midwest, places like Chicago, Detroit, and so there are more opportunities for collaboration. Another thing you could do is, if you don't have the resources or the ability to bring in a guest chef, why not find a cookbook from another culinary tradition and feature recipes of that culinary tradition on your menu, tell the story. And it's something, again, to engage people and start to get them to think outside of the confines of what their normal exposure is. And then I've also been thinking about this concept I call the welcome table. And the idea here is to have a structured meal program to engage people to deal with some issue that's a challenge to their community. So the first meal would be a potluck, and essentially the conveners, which would be those in the hospitality industry leaders or the owners of a restaurant or a hotel or whoever, would decide who's going to be part of this, bring those folks together. And then the idea is to just be a potluck, bring food from your culinary tradition, be in that space, build relationship. And after you've built relationship, then it's a matter of laying out the problem and the challenge and inviting people to be in this dialogue. After the invitation is extended, you're going to lose some people. Some people aren't interested in that, but hopefully you've chosen well, and these are people that want to engage. And so the second gathering is whoever's affected by that challenge, whatever it is, they have the floor and everybody else listens. And you make the food of the people affected by that challenge, right? So it's a way to show affinity and to show support for that group. And then the third meeting is a clapback. And so all the people that were involved in this effort who heard the problem addressed would say, this is what we heard, this is what we're processing, this is what we think we can do about it. And that would be straight comfort meal for that meeting. And then the fourth meeting would be an account of the journey thus far. Hopefully, the people who have been in this journey have figured out things that they can do. And then there will be an invitation for more discussion. And again, you might not have everybody who wants to do that, but hopefully some will. And for the food story in that last meeting would be a fusion meal. So you would bring in elements of everybody who's been involved in that discussion to talk about, how to deal with that challenge, and maybe how to continue to think creatively about the subject. Yeah. Throughout all of these journeys, whatever you do, also you have to take account that this is very tough stuff. We're dealing with centuries of stuff in some issues, in some situations. And so we have to make sure that we have not only group care, but self-care for the people who endeavor to do these things. But given the divides in our country, this is a time for creativity. And people in the hospitality industry know what creativity is all about. You do it every day. You bring joy to so many people. And I think, again, because this is one of the few spaces left where we can come together, this is a challenge that we should not approach with fear, but we should approach with excitement and enthusiasm, and we can make a difference. And not only can we make a difference, but we can also do something that's good for the bottom line. So thank you for indulging me on this brainstorm. I hope you enjoy the rest of this event, and I appreciate you. Much love to you all. Peace.